Welcome to Your Donut, Your Eat It, You Eat It. I'm your host, Sean. So it's been a while since I started talking about movies and culture, and the last time I talked to you guys about this stuff, I was talking about my book writing. So far, I'm 2.5 chapters in that I've written, but I'm going to do a partial rewrite on where I was going to take the story after today. There's a piece that I think that needs to be woven into this that I was going to do as a side thing that you would see in the book, but not be something that was kind of focused on. After today, I'm going to change that. So I saw The Sound of Freedom today, and I can tell you the movie is very impactful. There wasn't a dry eye in the house. It was about a 3/4 of a theater packed full of people when I saw it, which was triple what actually was at when I went to see Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. The movie is impactful in that it covers child trafficking. You know, this isn't a QAnon movie. So I had seen the Dial of Destiny last week, last Sunday, and I decided that with the charts that were showing that The Sound of Freedom was getting close to beating or tying Indiana Jones, I had to see what this movie was about, especially in the political spaces I kind of hang out in and seen the press and hype around what this movie was. So I had to see what it was about. And if you're a father or a mother, this is going to tear you apart. If you're a brother or a sister, you're going to feel some emotions during this movie, especially during the opening parts, that are going to tug at you and are going to push you in places that are going to make you confront some very, very horrible, bad things that are happening just across our border. And what's really sad is with our border being as porous as it is, it's allowing this type of thing to continue and get worse. You know, there's in the movie, there's 120 kids that are saved by the main character, Tim Ballard. And what's interesting about this is The Sound of Freedom is based off of a movie, or based off of Tim Ballard's real life, and this story is based loosely on what he did to actually save 125 kids from a sex trafficking ring. And despite what you've heard in like Rolling Stone or seen on Rolling Stone magazine, what they're talking about, this being a QAnon film or a QAnon adult film, this is nothing like that. It's not even a really heavily Christian film, even being put out by a really big Christian production company. So Angel Studios is the company that put this film out. And the only thing that is even slightly Christian in this movie is a line that the main character says, and that's God's children are not for sale. And it doesn't take anyone to be Christian or to even be heavily religious to agree with that statement. Kids aren't for sale. This type of behavior that is being depicted is a real life menace, and it's, you know, why people are fighting so hard right now against the trans agenda that you're seeing pushed down during Pride Month. You know, I think if they had left kids alone, Pride would have came and went, and there would be no incidents. The stuff with Dylan Mulvaney, none of that stuff would have caused anybody to look up from their newspaper, okay, or look up from their cup of coffee. But the fact that Dylan, his target audience is minors, and that they're actively trying to get kids to be involved in these shows or these type of events, kind of speaks volumes to where society is headed or where it is. And that needs to be fixed. There's one thing that we need to do, and we should have been doing it forever, is keeping the innocence of our kids. You know, kids don't need to be sexualized, period. You know, eventually they will get there. But it's up to the parent and the parents to stand up and say when and if that kid gets to know that piece of information. It's not something that should be shoved down their throat by the government in any way, or being pushed on it on your children when they're exposed to mass media. Let's keep kids as innocent as we can, because that's going to make them better people as they get older. You know, they have the rest of their life to understand the ins and outs of sex, because we all don't even know that as we get to be an adult. We have to figure that stuff out on our own. So it makes zero sense to me to push this on kids right away. You know, and to compare the two movies, if I was going to compare Indiana Jones to The Sound of Freedom, I'd actually say The Sound of Freedom was a better movie. It had a better storyline. It had a better plot, which, again, storyline. It had a better, pretty close to the same production value, if not better in some cases. There's no CGI in this. But it's very drama-filled and very, the best way I can put it is impactful. You know, they don't show child molestation, but it's heavily hinted at because it's key to the storyline. You know, you have to understand the situation that these kids, that that Tim Ballard's character, or Jim Caviezel's character, is rescuing. So you have to know what kind of evil these people are doing. And it's kind of a tearjerker in that you can empathize with the father of these kids, because what he was trying to do originally was to make sure that these kids had an opportunity that seemed too good to be true. Truth was that was the case, that it was too good to be true. And they were basically groomed into this type of thing, with their father being an unwitting accomplice at the beginning of the incident. And it's just horrifying, because I live in New Mexico, and part of this story takes place in Tijuana. Tijuana is, you know, close to my southern border. I mean, I can drive to Tijuana. And to think that this type of people and this type of activity could be passing through my state or occurring in my state, more than likely is, because we are a border state. What are we doing to stop it? I mean, I was so angry in part of this where I actually wanted to see military intervention. If we're going to send troops to die for American interests, or for global interest even at that, what better interest would there be than kids? To me, that's a problem that solves itself. I don't know very many Marines, airmen, or soldiers that if they were told, we're going to send you to a place you could possibly die, but you're going to save kids, that wouldn't sign up and do it. This is one of those good things that we could do that I don't see the military being very against. It would be a sledgehammer going after a tack nail, but it's something that I believe in my whole heart, especially after today, that needs to occur. You know, all these kids that are being hurt, we've known about it for years, you know, especially from Hollywood. You know, Corey Haim came out, or I think that's his name, or Corey Feldman. It's either one or the other. One of them passed away, the other one's still around. Was talking about the molestation and the depravity that was happening in Hollywood years ago. And it's become more amplified, especially after Epstein's death, and people wondering what happened and who was his client list more specifically. After seeing what I saw today in that movie, I want to know that even more. I want to root out this stuff in the United States. The fact is that Americans that are depraved and are mentally defective on multiple levels go to other countries to do bad things to kids because they can. And that needs to be stopped outright. The fact that anyone could go hurt a kid like this and damage them for life shouldn't happen. And to me, the demand needs to be made that it's got to stop. We need to figure out how to stop this as a society. And that's where I can see my sensitivity to the grooming and stuff that I've seen in the media, and with those gay and trans events, even though they say they're not grooming, that's where that leads to, is damaging a kid so much so that they're stuck with that baggage for the rest of their life. We broke someone that hasn't even got a chance to succeed or go off on their own yet. It is incumbent to us as a species to protect our young. And I understand why people say that we need to protect the gay and lesbian young kids that are just now coming out. But I don't think we need to expose them to sex either until they're farther along the line and figuring out exactly what it is that they're looking at. It's contrasting in that you have a feel-good movie with Indiana Jones, where Indiana Jones was nostalgia. That's basically what it is. They play on your nostalgia bait. They bring in the storyline, the new characters. You see Indiana Jones as an old man that should be past retirement, or should be retired. And I think this is probably the last Indiana Jones. They don't hint at that. And then you could definitely take the story somewhere else if they wanted to beat a dead horse. But I don't see them doing that. But The Sound of Freedom is something that was put out not as propaganda. It looks like, from the outside looking in, that Hollywood didn't want to touch this. This was a Disney movie. Disney owned it for a year or two before it was released. And it was so hot to, or toxic to their environment or their culture, that they didn't want to put it out. And these guys found a way to do it still. And I think that it's one of those movies, kind of like The Day After, if you've ever heard about The Day After. The Day After depicted nuclear strikes that the Russians and the Americans did, and what would be the after effects of that. And it pretty much helped curb the Cold War, or cool it down. And I think this movie has that same potential to shine a lot of light into a lot of dark recesses in the United States and the world in general, that needs to show that stuff. The roaches need to scatter, because this is horrific. And that's the best way I could put it. You know, I will tell you that there's a happy ending to all this, at least for the movie. There seems to be a happy ending for parts of the storyline, but it also seems like the character, the guy that actually was the real dude that the story was written about, Tim Ballard, he's still trying to fight sex trafficking. And you can find him on Twitter, you can find him on YouTube, where he's actually started. I've seen him in videos now where he was talking to Congress about what is going on and what he had to do to break into their little scheme. You know, it's sad place that we're there. You know, I don't want to get banned anywhere, but I can understand the reasons for the death penalty now in some places. You know, I don't believe the state should have that power, but if these people that are doing this to kids are repeat offenders, the best thing you can do for them is to send them back to their vendor. There is no point in trying to keep them alive on taxpayer dollars, because they will just be a sap to the world, and especially if they're going to hurt kids again. And it looks like if you're that type of person, you have a extremely high chance of becoming a repeat offender. And that cannot be sat for our country, for our world. So as I wind this down, I would once again remind you, it is a great idea to go see The Sound of Freedom. Not just because the issue needs to be highlighted, but alternative media, alternative movies that are coming out need to be held up to the same standard and shown off, so that Hollywood understands that there's an audience for this type of thing, that there's an audience for alternative media or alternative movies. Like, share, subscribe, be great.
My politics are rather controversial. Who would have thought that I ain't catching all slack and I have enemies